Episode 107, Handkerchief Dynasty.
Yes. Welcome everybody. Handkerchief Dynasty, episode 107, a special video presentation brought to you through the power of technology. I'm, as always, your senior professor.
You waited about 10 seconds to mug to the camera.
That's true.
You had to do it.
I had to get it in. Yeah.
You had to do it. We were just talking about how the secret professor had perfected his camera mug. And he was like, yeah, I'm going to save it, though. I'm only going to do that like once every 3 episodes. 10 seconds into the start of the episode, camera mug. I'm sure we'll see about 10 more before the episode's through.
Camera glass over here.
Yeah. As long as we maintain the same disastrous trajectory for the first video podcast, we should be fine. As long as we maintain the brand. I don't want to go off brand. So I'm as always the secret professor, joined by my good friend, the High Priest of Oilers Magic. How are you, High Priest?
I'm well.
Fantastic. I'm also very pleased to be joined by Zach Laing of Oilers Nation, the Nation Network. Zach, returning guest of honor, and our first video guest in the video sphere.
It's an honor, honestly. It's a great opportunity to be here with you guys, and happy to be a part of it.
Okay, so Zach, I have to ask you.
It's a great opportunity.
Hey, we're making history here. It's awesome. I love it.
So, okay, lay it on me, guys. I mean, we're 6-6 after being 3-6. I feel like I was in the pits of despair, just like a deep, deep well of endless despair, like the abyss level despair, the abyss. And then after a few games, like we beat Toronto, Ottawa is like an AHL team right now, so we can't really like feel too good about it. But like, what do you guys think? Where do you think the Oilers are at right now? What's your assessment of this team as we're very close to the quarter mark here?
Well, for me, it's kind of interesting. You know, coming into those 2 Ottawa games, there was obviously a lot of concern, right? You know, 3-6, we lost some tight games. We got blown out a couple of times. You know, the underlying numbers were still saying, hey, let's, hold our breath a little bit here. And that's what happened. And we got 2 big wins against Ottawa, a team that we should have beat the way we did. So it was great to see. I think there's a lot of little things that happen in that 2 games that could change some things for the Oilers here too. I mean, you know, the first game obviously, you know, put up 8 points, which is tremendous. But I said this on our State of the Nation podcast we do on Tuesdays. You know, there's a lot of concerning things that happened in that game too, right? You know, we gave up 2 quick goals twice in the game, and there was some pretty awful defensive play by the Edmonton Oilers that led to some goals that maybe shouldn't have happened. So coming into the second game against Ottawa, I thought they did a great job in first of all, still continuing to score, which was great to see. But also B, they tightened up their game defensively. You know, they limited those big chances that Ottawa had in the first game. And, you know, a guy like Evan Bouchard steps into the Oilers lineup for the first time this year and looks like he has played in every single game this year. So I think, you know, moving forward, obviously got the even record now and we're in the conversation for the playoffs, right? So it'll be interesting to kind of see what happens over the next little stretch here.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. Obviously, we're in a much better spot than we were. I think I'm not sure what kind of measuring stick Ottawa is right now. I mean, the Oilers played well, but the Ottawa
they're like a measuring stick and for some like a measuring system that like is defunct. They tried during like the Enlightenment period that just completely died out. It's like a pseudo metric system. It's that kind of measuring stick. It's a measuring stick of no value.
Yeah, like they were really tough games to kind of, I mean, I guess I shouldn't look at it so critically, you know, like it was, we really like beat the living stuffing out of the Ottawa Senators. So I think we're going into this, like we're on a streak here. We cooked up a 10-ounce steak with mashed potatoes, and now we're taking it into this game against the Flames, and I think we are in a much better position than they are right now. Maybe it was just a case of the early season jitters. I don't know. They looked Oilers stinky for a while, and it was very worrisome. But then they like whooped the sample time, and I'm not quite so down on the Dumps.
I mean, I think especially early on, the Oilers looked like they were a team that played no exhibition games, right? Like they didn't seem to have any of that crispness to their game that you would hope coming into a season. But then, hey, in the same breath, you know, there's 6 other teams in this now that didn't play any other exhibition games either. And look at how Toronto came out and started the year. I mean, they're looking tremendous right now, and they're a team that didn't have any exhibition games either, and a team, in my eyes, that on paper stacks up pretty close to the Edmonton Oilers as of right now, right? So where does it come down to with that is the thing that I always keep looking back on too, right? Because how many years have we sat here as people following the Oilers saying, oh, great, another slow start to the season, right? It almost seems like it's the never-ending
I ran out of fingers. Sorry, I can't count that high. Yeah. It's tale as old as time, a song as old as rhyme.
Pretty much.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're usually in those years, we're usually out of it by Christmas time, right? So I think that maybe Valentine's Day would be the equivalent in this season. We'd be out of it by Valentine's Day, and we're still in it. So by the Christmas measurement, I think this would be right around Christmas in a typical season. So I think already, to me, the season has been a success because I'm not miserable at what would be Christmas in a typical season.
That's true. It is kind of difficult to figure out the timeline with the delayed start because like right around now, this would be like the November slump where you just really want to, you really like, you know, you dream of like a sweet release, you know, from the pain. And then, but
well, right about now,
this is like the equivalent of us shaking off like at the end of December when Yamo started, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Right about now is when we'd be saying, oh, we're going to be out of it. It's not even Christmas time yet. We're going to be out of it before Christmas. So I think we're already like, by that metric, the season's already brought me like a modicum of happiness that I'm satisfied with. So well done, Oilers.
Yeah.
No matter, it's all gravy from here on in, as far as I'm considered.
Do we, so are we expecting them to, like, do they have their shit together? Like, is it fair to say, like, we feel like they're starting to gel? I mean, obviously, we still don't really necessarily have like a full-time third and fourth line, but, and people could go cold, but is it fair to say, but we're like, we're not going to see the kind of, like, they were so bad. They were so unbelievably bad to start the year. Are they going to be that bad again for a stretch? Or are we just looking forward to like rosy, sunny shores? Like last 5 minutes of Shawshank Redemption, just like paradise.
I think maybe somewhere in the middle a little bit, you know, like we're kind of halfway in the pipe right now, and you know, we're kind of in the thick of it, right? And we don't know if we got that light at the end of the tunnel or if all of a sudden we're about to drown in the sewers, right? I think Saturday is going to be a good test. It's probably the most important game of the season so far. And I mean, you could say in a 56-game season, when you're only playing teams in your division, that every single game is the most important. In another breath, you know, if the Oilers rather, come out and throw a stinker on Saturday night, you're going to have to sound the alarm because, you know, you had an opportunity against Ottawa to gain some serious traction and gel as a team and put up those points and also play a good defensive game. You need to come out against the Flames on Saturday with a big win, in my eyes, right? I mean, if not, then you're saying, well, what was those last two games for, right? I mean,
it's funny because it's so easy happening. Like it would be the most Oilers thing ever if they just came out like totally flat. And I was like, oh, here we go again. They didn't show up. They didn't show up.
It has all the tales of one of those games, right?
I know.
You know, the Oilers are riding high after two big wins against Ottawa. They scored 12 goals, and Draisaitl and McDavid. Oh, they got 3 days off, 3 days of rest. They're going to come out ready to go, right? So, you know, the optimist in me says, you know, that's not going to happen. But the guy who's been watching the Oilers for 15 years, go through the decade of darkness, says Oh boy.
Well,
Yeah.
what do you think? The Flames are reeling right now. Like the Flames
Yeah.
are in a position, like they're in a state. The Flames are in a state right now. How do you think they're going to come out in this game on Saturday night? What kind of game are you expecting on Saturday?
I'm expecting a good game first and foremost. I mean, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff from last year that might be carrying over a little bit, but hey, the Flames got to take it to them tonight, right?
Yes, they did.
4-1 to Winnipeg. 2 of the last 3 they lost against the Jets. They eked out the win in the shootout thanks to Gaudreau, which was a beautiful goal in its own right. But they're a team that's kind of in the same position as Edmonton right now. And then, of course, you throw in the Sam Bennett trade rumors that are swirling, and that never helps any team at any point this season, right?
Also,
so
how about throwing like Kassian and Brady Tkachuk in the Edmonton-Ottawa game, the way that game ended? Like, there's so many levels of intrigue to this game on Saturday. You know what I mean?
Full stop. I mean,
like
there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
So Edmonton
is say like, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, absolutely. You go ahead.
I think I know what you were going to kind of get at there, but it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. It's going to be one of those, first 5 minutes set the tone for the game sort of thing, right? Who knows? It's just one of those games where there's so many unknowns, right? Like, does Kassian come out and just cream somebody in the first 5 minutes, and then we have a goddamn bloodbath again? Who knows? It could happen, and then who knows? Maybe it's a game where there's a win 1-0 or lose 1-0, or maybe it's a 8-5 game. It's so unpredictable right now. It's so hard to project anything in my eyes.
Is it put up or shut up time for Zack Kassian? Like, is this the game where Zach like emerges like a Dragon Ball Z character, having like powered up and been working out for like 6 months on the sidelines? Like, this is last chance Texaco for him, kind of, in a way. I mean, I know he's looked okay on the third line, but I guess the third line's kind of the fourth line now, right? With Neil and Turris.
Yeah, Neil and Turris. I mean, it's nice to know that we got 3 more full years of Zack Kassian. Like, it's tough. It's a tough position to be in. Obviously, he didn't come out the way anybody expected him to, and this predates last season too, as we sat and talked about in the summertime in the play-in tournament. Was where's Zack Kassian, right? And even towards the end of the regular season last year, he kind of seemed to drop off the face of the earth for a little bit. So there was some concern, obviously,
kinda,
and just a little bit, and I think he's looked better in that third line role, and hopefully it's been a bit of a wake-up call. Thankfully, you have the emergence of a guy like Jesse Puljujärvi, playing incredible hockey, who can slide up on that top line and do a better job than Kassian was. But it's getting pretty close to make or break time with Kassian here. I won't lie, I was already looking up what it would look like to buy him out at the end of the season, and honestly, it's not terrible. It's not a terrible buyout. And then you got the Seattle expansion at the end of the season too. Hey, maybe Seattle needs a good, gritty veteran right winger, and maybe Edmonton can trade him a pick or something to get him to take Kassian or something like that. I don't know, right? But he's not playing like a guy who's making almost $3.5 million. That's for sure.
Well, in his defense, I will say he ended last season, and like before the season was stopped, like I don't really remember how he was playing, but I know we were doing very well. Mm-hmm. And then we played the preseason pre-qualifying round game against Calgary, and I thought he was okay in that game. He was a presence. He disappeared for the Chicago series. He had a baby like a week ago, so he was expecting, him and his wife were expecting a baby for the first kind of chunk of this season, which, I mean, if we're going to give the team the exhibition game pass, then I think we kind of have to give a guy like Zack Kassian an exhibition game pass as well. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think these last 3 games, since he's moved down to the third line, to me, it's been night and day from what he was bringing at the beginning of the season and even in the qualifying round. I thought the past 3 games, he's kind of retooling the way he influences the game to where he's at his career. He's kind of finding the right combination of things to make that work, to make himself still be useful on the team. And I'm hoping that this Calgary game is sort of the catalyst for that, or like the climax of his experimentation with himself and his skills.
So like,
I'm expecting a big game.
His college year is like his second college year, basically, like the pinnacle of his experiment, the Kassian experimentation.
That's exactly right. That's exactly what I was trying to say. Yeah, I'm expecting big things from him moving forward, and I think that his last chance might have been, to me, when he got moved to the third line. But I think he's improved. It's like night and day to me. For that entire third line, I think our third line, I think he brings something on the third line that kind of belongs on the first line and isn't necessarily, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not necessarily sure he's the right fit for a player like Connor McDavid. So I'm definitely.
I'm a little more sure he definitely is not the right fit for Connor McDavid. He's had more than enough time to justify his existence on that line, and I don't want to fucking see him up there again. Quite frankly, I'm done. I'm done with Kassian on McDavid's wing.
Yeah, but don't be mad at the guy. Like, go easy on him. Take it easy.
No, my anger. It's love. My anger is love. I disguise my love as abuse. I mean, like, it's just he's a third line player. You know.
I know.
Yeah,
exactly.
He is. He's a third line player who got paid like he played 2 seasons alongside Connor McDavid. And give Kassian credit, he was able to produce on that top line for good stretches of time too. He put up some good points.
Yeah.
And there was some good stuff to see there. But you know, when you're playing with the best player in the world, you need to be consistent. And I would not describe Zack Kassian in any sense of the word as somebody who is a consistent player in the NHL. And I think he's very streaky, and I think he's a guy who fits more down that third line role long term. And like you said, he looked down there so far. So who knows what happened, but where now you're paying almost $3.5 million for a third line player who can't really produce a lot of offense when he's not playing with the best player in the world.
True, but if he were to drop the gloves on Saturday with Tkachuk, then you'd have a hard time finding anyone who didn't think he was worth $3 million. Like, that's the thing about a guy like Zack Kassian, right? Like,
he's so lucky. He's so lucky he has this chance.
Yeah, but
it's like, is there like a team on the Anaheim? Is there a team on the Anaheim Ducks who's just like been memoirs of an invisible man for like 8 months, and then they're like, oh, we're playing Arizona, and that's going to be the game that wakes me up. It's like,
yeah, I don't know. There's many guys like Zack Kassian in the league, though. I'm a Zack Kassian guy. I think when he's on, he's one of a handful of guys in the league that can do what he does. He's got really soft hands. He's quick, like he's a great skater. He's fast, and he knows where the edge of the game is, and he knows how to get there and how to stay there. And he's also, not necessarily 100% inclined never to cross that line. And I think those guys are, if you have a guy like that, like, you don't want to squander it. You don't necessarily want to blow it. And I don't think he kind of lost his way on what he's supposed to be by playing on the first line. So I'm willing to give him a pass. I don't think in his heart he ever thought he was a first line player. Were you mugging to the camera there, Secret Professor?
I don't know what I'm doing. To be honest, I'm extremely distracted by the video component. It's like, I'm really gonna have to get used to it. I mean, I know we all love Zack Kassian.
Full stop.
I saw that. Yes.
I'm a big Zack Kassian fan. He's got a great first name, even though the last letter is spelled wrong. I'm a big fan of his game, and I think you're exactly right. He can play the game on that edge. Like I just, I harken back to the 2017 playoffs against the San Jose Sharks when it was like a damn bull in a china shop, But again, it's that inconsistency and in his game that is so frustrating to see, because you just want to see him be the Zack Kassian he can be, right? And he struggles to seem to do that on a night-to-night basis. But again, there's more than a fair share of streaky players across the NHL.
Yeah, that's true. I just sort of like he was pretty consistent last year before the stoppage, though, wasn't he? Like last year sort of seemed like he turned a corner.
It was mostly the year, but the year before last, I think. Wasn't it?
Yeah.
Didn't he go stone cold for like the bottom half of last year? I mean, we should talk about another player on the Oilers though, because we've literally spent the entire show talking about Zack Kassian, who's probably the seventh most significant player. Maybe, I don't know. It is his last chance though, so it's notable, and I'm glad we're talking about
in this game.
If he doesn't come and punch someone in the face, I'm opposed to violence in all forms. But if he doesn't go and punch someone in the face on Saturday, whether during the game or before or after, I don't care. He just has to do it.
Well, I think he's an important part of this game. I think that's why we're talking about him so much, is because he's the guy on the Oilers that's going to be expected to really up his game to win this thing, because the Calgary Flames, they're built to push us around, right? Like that's why they have Luch. Their entire deal is beating us. Like we have the skill guys, so they got the guys that they have. You know what I mean? So we don't have a lot of guys that are going to be able to bring that, physical thing to the game. Yeah, although last game, it was we scored 8 goals in that game. So yeah, I don't know. I'm so curious how this game's going to turn out. What about Dave Tippett? Do you guys think that Dave Tippett, there's a method to his madness, or do you think he's gotten very lucky in some instances where he's made decisions and they've turned out? We've happened to win that game. Whereas if we had lost that game, I think if we had lost the games where Dave Tippett had done things that surprised us, I think he'd be under heavy scrutiny right now. What do you guys think about that?
If we got to 2-7 instead of 3-6, it was right on the edge there. And it is funny. I actually am going back and forth between he's dug in his heels and he's completely off his rocker, or he's really, really wily and he has it all figured out and he's seeing shit on a different level that I just can't even comprehend. It's one or the other, and I have no idea. There's nothing in between. I'm curious what Zach has to think.
I know,
especially vis-a-vis also because I think Nuge and McDavid have decent chemistry. The High Priest is really disparaging of their chemistry. Zach, where do you land on this whole question?
Well, it's been better, but
I totally agree with you guys on those points. I think he's somewhere between playing 3D chess and somewhere between playing something that's not 3D chess. I can't think of an analogy right now, but it's really interesting. It's late here. It's been a long day. It's really interesting. I listened to his post game. I've been listening to all of the post gamers this year, and I've been transcribing them all as quick as I can. It was really interesting. The last 2 against Ottawa, the 8-5 game, he was pissed off after the game. He was upset that the Oilers won the way they did because they played so poor defensively. He couldn't take away from obviously the great offensive night they had, but there was some serious concerns that he expressed over the penalty kill, over the defensive play. Yeah. And then he comes out against Ottawa in the second game, and the Oilers come out and they play a tighter defensive game against a team that just put up 5 goals against him. Granted, one game Stuart Skinner's in net playing his first ever NHL game, and then you got Koskinen in net. So, but nonetheless, it seemed that those defensive woes that he was concerned about had been fixed, albeit temporarily. And he had answered a couple questions about, well, Dave, how much is this just, we just played Ottawa, right? how much does that factor into it? And he said it doesn't, because at the end of the day, it's the old any given Sunday, like any team can beat any team, any game of the year sort of thing. And that was really interesting for me to kind of hear from him, because, he also talked about his preparation and the way he prepares the team, and that, hey, look, okay, sure, we just beat Ottawa 8-5, but our defensive game was so bad that we should have actually probably lost that game. Because if it's against any team that's not Ottawa, it's a blowout the other way, no question about it, right?
Yeah.
So it was kind of interesting to sort of hear that the philosophy behind preparing the team and trying to get them ready that way. I'm a big Dave Tippett fan. He's really impressed me in the last year or two here, and I think he's the whole players coach thing that everybody always talks about with Dave Tippett. I think it's on full display right now.
My faith is you've buttressed my faith again. I mean, yeah, I mean, you got to be honest. Like, in terms of point improvement percentage, like he's way up there. Like, I know Dallas Eakins improved our Corsi by some amount, but like in terms of like coaches who have appreciably improved the Oilers' performance, Tippy's got to be up there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at the year-over-year changes between McClellan and Hitchcock and Tippett, and it's drastic, right? One of my favorite quotes that really stood out to me, Tippett really quietly, subtly took a total huge shot at the Oilers' past organization. Somebody was asking him about Jesse Puljujarvi and the way he's kind of turned his game around. And Dave Tippett kind of said something to the tune of, well, I don't know what happened before I was here, but like, this is a player who's coming to the rink every night ready to work and is looking really, really good. And like, this sort of thing.
That's
right?
what you say when you join an organization that's been a total fucking joke. That's all you can say.
It's all you can say.
You shrug. Look,
right?
I can't comment on what happened before I got here. It was obviously a complete fucking catastrophe.
Yeah. And just another thing too, like, look at the way Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are playing right now. Like, as much as they're scoring 2 points a game right now, and they're probably bored out there beating up on every team in the North Division, they're two players who I see in a different light this season than I have in any of the years past. Like, their defensive game looks so much improved over last year, even from the play-in tournament to the start of this season. I see a real shift there. And there's numbers, the numbers, the analytics really support that. So, Leon Draisaitl, I think, really took to heart that everybody said he shouldn't have won the Hart Trophy because he was a poor defensive player, which I still think is a bit of a load of crap. But he really took that to heart, and they're actually there's a statistic called goals above replacement. It just basically helps to evaluate a player based on a baseline level of a replacement level player. And the higher the goals above replacement, the better a player is. McDavid and Draisaitl are two of the top 3 or 4 players in the entire NHL right now. And that takes into account the entirety of their game as players, their offensive production, their neutral zone play, their defensive play as well. So, I think we're seeing a real evolution in some of these players. And I think a lot of that comes to Dave Tippett too, and what he's able to get out of these players. You look at the way Jesse Puljujarvi is playing this year. I mean, of course, there's an element of him being a confident player, but his game is different on a North American ice surface than it was 2 years ago. And as much as, there's probably some element that came from his play in Finland, they're playing on the big ice over there still. So if Puljujarvi wasn't committed to changing his game to fit into the NHL, he'd be coming back and still being that sort of perimeter player that we used to see. But now we see Jesse Puljujarvi as a guy who's driving hard to the net, who's learning how to use his size, who gets his first goal of the year off of a huge rebound that had him fighting through a big defenseman.
How good did you feel watching that goal? It's just like the feeling of elation that like rained down upon like all of Alberta and the surrounding provinces.
You know what? That was an iconic Oilers goal. There's been several. We've been blessed with iconic Oilers goals over the past 2 or 3 seasons. That's one of them. That goal is going to be remembered for a long time. It was a spectacular first goal by a player who needed a goal. And I mean, to get one like that in that game at this point in the season was an iconic goal. That's a good metric of measuring a coach, is noticing improvement in their superstars. And I'd have to agree. Connor McDavid and Draisaitl almost every year have. It doesn't feel like they've ever been the same player in like 2 years in a row, 2 seasons in a row.
Yeah.
And I think Dave Tippett has maybe, fertilized that growth, made it happen faster than it would have under any other conditions. He seems to be a really good coach for this team. But then again, like, he's also made some crazy decisions this year, I think, that just happened to turn out for him.
Well, there's been some weird ones for sure. Like I can't remember the game specifically, but it was just before Ottawa, that whole end of the game timeout situation where he just totally outcoached himself. And
there was an icing a couple games before that too, where there was like 2 seconds left, and he didn't challenge the clock. He didn't challenge the time on the clock.
Yeah.
And we had literally just won a game with 1 second on the clock. Like,
it was the game after.
Yeah.
So there's definitely still those elements, and that's what's going to separate a very good coach like a Dave Tippett from an elite coach like John Cooper, for example, where Cooper might not have those mistakes where Tippett does, and I don't think that there's any coach in the NHL that's a perfect coach. Nor do I think there's a perfect coach in any sport at any level, for that matter, who's a perfect coach.
What about like a robot sport coached by robots?
That's where we're headed.
You can't trust robots, honestly. Look at what happened in Terminator 2. Skynet, man, that stuff's scary.
Hey, hold on. We love Skynet. Skynet's cool. We're down with Skynet. Don't talk shit on Skynet. We've gotten into trouble before. I'm also curious. I mean, we saw another very notable debut. One Evan Bouchard. How are you guys feeling about his performance and his chances for sticking on this roster here long term? I mean, I think he's got a decent shot.
Yeah, I think he's in Edmonton for the rest of the season. I don't see him going back to Bakersfield. He looked really, really good. Really, really good against Ottawa. Granted, again, it's Ottawa, but hey, they're an NHL team that are icing NHL caliber players. He looked calm. He looked cool. He looked collected. He didn't do much more than he needed to do out there. He seemed to expend the perfect amount of energy every single time he was on the ice. It was really impressive to see, and he gets on the board with a beautiful assist on that point shot. I was going to mention too, just before we got into this, about that being a really great goal from Puljujarvi too. A beautiful deflection getting to a quote dirty area of the ice, right?
Totally.
But that doesn't happen if you don't have a defenseman like Bouchard who can step in quickly and fire a shot like that. Bouchard seems to play, and again, we're talking one game here this season, so extremely small sample size, but he seemed to play a very complete game out there. And, he didn't have those moments where, like Adam Larson, where all of a sudden he's got the puck on his stick and it's like a ticking time bomb. And then Larson doesn't know what to do with it, so he just tries to chip it off the glass and it gets dribbles out to the neutral zone, and then the other team's defenseman picks it up and the pressure's still on. Bouchard doesn't seem to have that element of his game when he's got the puck on his stick. And again, that comes to his development as a player in general, as an offensive-minded defenseman. But, there's a lot of players and a lot of defensemen from that 2018 class that are playing full-time minutes in the NHL right now. And I don't see any reason right now why Bouchard shouldn't be one of those guys. He looks really good out there, and I think it's really great to see. And all of a sudden we have a good problem to have here in Edmonton, where all of a sudden we're like, hey, wait a second. We actually have like 7 or 8 defensemen here that can play any single night and contribute some level of value on a regular basis. So it's a good problem to have as far as I'm concerned, right?
Yeah, I think this Calgary game is going to be a real test for him because he's going to be throwing. I mean, the Ottawa game, he had a lot of time and space to work with. Like, it wasn't a really aggressive forecheck. And in this Calgary game, I mean, the heat's going to be turned up. So, I mean, he looked great in that Ottawa game, spectacular. He almost scored. He almost scored in that game, which also would have been. I mean, he missed by inches, right? If that goes in, that rush at near the end of the game, if that goes in, that's another iconic Oilers goal. If he had put that in, he was very close to scoring. So, but I'm going to reserve judgment until I see this Calgary game because he's going to get minutes in that game. I think he's starting. Have they said he's in the game?
Well, he was skating. He was skating with the top six defensemen. So, there could be an option, I guess, of Ethan Bear sliding back in and maybe Bouchard comes out for him. But as far as I'm concerned, he had good enough of a performance that he deserves to be in the lineup on Saturday against the Calgary Flames.
But if he has a stinky game again, let's just say hypothetically, then what do we do? I mean, then what happens? Does he come out of the lineup or does he like? You know what I mean? Like, how many chances is Evan Bouchard going to get? Is this like a Yamamoto situation? Is this the equivalent of Yamo coming in last season?
Personally, I think it should be. I personally think it should be the equivalent where you put him out there, you give him some sheltered minutes, you play him with a guy like Chris Russell on the third pairing, and you kind of just let him make some mistakes. But in the same breath, given the fact that they took, 8 games to get him into the lineup, makes me think that if he comes out Saturday, if he even plays and has a stinker, he'll be in the press box. And it's the same situation that happened earlier in the year with Caleb Jones and Ethan Bear, where against Montreal, they had a tough game. Bear got back in 2 nights later, but it took Jones 6 games to get into the lineup. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it should be a full-on youth movement here in Edmonton. We should be having Caleb Jones, Ethan Bear, and Evan Bouchard in the lineup every single night, because whether they make rookie mistakes or young guy mistakes or not, they play a style of game that is more, how do I word this, more relevant or more needed from a defenseman right now. It's all about the puck play for me right now, right? They do things with the puck that Adam Larson and Chris Russell just simply can't. They just simply can't. They just don't have it in their skill set. So for me, I'm a big fan of these young guys that the Oilers got right now, and I think that they're all down the road going to be great defensemen. But I'll put this out there right now. What is Adam Larson on a nightly basis bringing to the Oilers lineup that is consistent? Because right now I'm not really seeing much, and he's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. And moving forward, I really don't know if I see a place for him on this Oilers lineup after this season. So, if your plan is long-term as an organization to not have Adam Larson being a part of your organization, because you have guys like Bear and Bouchard, then, what difference is Adam Larson going to make for your team right now that a guy like Bear or Bouchard couldn't?
Yeah. Doesn't Larson, hasn't he blocked the most shots in the league or something like that?
Yeah, he has. Given credit, he's blocked the most shots in the league, right? But, I have a love-hate with blocked shots because you have a guy out there with a bunch of padding on who's supposed to stop the puck. So as far as I'm concerned, in a way, that's kind of the new school approach that I have. I love the guys who get down and love seeing guys block shots, right? But I'm kind of how many times have we seen guys get hurt blocking shots when you have a damn goaltender there with, 10 pounds of padding on him, right? So that's kind of where I kind of come from that mindset, right?
That's some spicy takes. I like that.
How many times have we seen Oscar Klefbom or Nugent-Hopkins break their hand, blocking a shot? Or you look at the last game against Ottawa, Tim Stützle, he got down and blocked a shot in the dying minutes of the third period, took it off the laces. And he went back into the bench in extreme amount of pain. Like, what happened if Stützle broke his foot there? You know what I mean? Like, it's so. Nonetheless, I'm tangenting. Sorry.
No. But actually, I wanted to ask you, sticking on the defense though, because like, what do you think of Barrie right now? He's got 9 points in 12 games. He's -6. Do you think do you predict that his offensive output will cover the bet vis-a-vis his defensive woes by the end of the year? Like, do you see him covering the bet?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, everybody in the NHL knows what Tyson Barrie is, right? He's an offensive defenseman who isn't going to give you a ton in the defensive zone. He'll still give you a bit of. He's got some value as a player in his own zone, but he's got that game-breaking offensive talent that we're starting to see him coming into his own life.
Yeah.
Look, this is a guy who at every stop in the NHL has played with superstars. Got to play with McKinnon in Colorado. He got to play with Matthews in Toronto. Now he gets to play with McDavid and Draisaitl in Edmonton. He's the perfect kind of defenseman that the Edmonton Oilers have been looking for. Yeah. Like, how long have we thought and theorized, and how long has Bob Stauffer yelled into the ethers of trade for Tyson Barrie? Like, It's been a decade of it, and now we have Tyson Barrie, and all of a sudden, 8 games into the season, we're panicking because he's not producing offense. Like, it was sort of a situation where everybody had to step back, and now everybody stepped back a little bit. And look, he's got 9 points to start the year so far in the grand scheme of things, and he's well on his way to scoring a point per game, like I have kind of projected at the beginning of the season. So I think Tyson Barrie is exactly who he is, and exactly somebody the Oilers have been looking for a long time. You're on mute.
Sticking on predictions, I predicted that also the Nuge would finish over a point a game. Do you think that prediction is going to stand? Do you think that's a good prediction? And in terms of like how high my panic should be, like when it comes to the Nuge not yet being re-signed, like, should I be at a 10? Should I be at a 25? What scale are we using? What's the metric? How much of my hair should I be lighting on fire right now?
Well, I think when we talk about keeping Nuge forever, we should be at about a DEFCON 1 right about now. I'm concerned that there hasn't been a contract signed for sure, but I'm trying to be patient through it all. I would have loved to have seen him get inked in, prior to this season, but he's a guy who's doing exactly what he can do well, and that's play a complete game in the NHL. He's been my favorite Edmonton Oiler for so long because of his ability to be solid defensively and also provide offensive value. And look, as long as he's playing alongside Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl, I don't see any reason why he can't be a point per game player for the Edmonton Oilers this year. So, and even when, people were saying, oh, he's struggling to start the year, he was still scoring like a point per game. Like, he had 4 points in the first 3 or 4 games, and people were harking on him for not, looking great by the eye, but he was still producing. So I'm a huge, huge fan of the Nuge, to say the least.
As we are here too. Well, let's start the wind down procedure here, guys. Thanks so much for coming on, Zach, and sorry, you're just so sexy, High Priest of Oilers Magic. I'm just distracted. I can't even remember your name. It's like fucking Brad Pitt is on this goddamn Zoom call here. I might shave next time, but I'd be remiss if I didn't just ask you, Zach, because like obviously you got your finger on the pulse over a pretty big swath of the NHL right now, and there's a lot of news flying about. I'm just curious, like, what are the stories that you're following that are of most interest to you, or do you think are kind of the craziest? Because there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, there's a lot. We got to remember that there's actually hockey happening south of the border as well this year. I think
you're forgetting that. Yeah, it's impossible to remember. Like, I could not give less of a shit. It's insane how little of a shit I give.
Yeah, I've actually been trying to watch a little bit more of the States games this year. Try to keep a better finger on the pulse down there too. But I think right now COVID is the biggest issue. Kind of around the NHL, right? I'm just trying to pull up an email here really quickly from the NHL I got tonight. But there's some definite concerns over what's happening south of the border. We got what do we got here? Colorado, Minnesota, St. Louis, New Jersey, Vegas. They're all having some pretty serious COVID outbreaks. that are limiting their ability to play games. So I think that's probably one of the biggest storylines right now, is sort of what's going to happen with the NHL. Of course, we saw yesterday the National Women's Hockey League had to actually suspend their season due to COVID issues, and it's just heartbreaking to see.
It is
for a league that seemingly has been doing pretty well this year with this bubble situation. I know I was watching games on Twitch, and there was some great hockey being played.
I'll tell you what, man. If the women's NHL had gone, the NWHL, if those playoff games are going to be televised, people were going to watch those games. It totally sucks because women's hockey was. I mean, I've never seen anything. It feels like it was getting the most exposure. It's still so. It's not nearly enough, but it was getting the most it had ever had, and it was ascending. You know what I mean? Like it was showing the highlights in the same highlights packages.
I think people really respected when the players stood up for themselves and actually demanded some like respect and like called out all the shady stuff that was going on with the team owners and stuff.
Totally, but sorry, Zach, I interrupted you.
No worries at all. No worries at all. It's all good. I think it's a really important thing to talk about, when it comes to growing the game of hockey. So, but yeah, no, I think COVID's going to be one of the biggest and most interesting things to kind of keep an eye on. Obviously, the states are still having major issues with their ability to control the virus, even with the vaccines coming out. And we'll try and keep the political talk away from all of this, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens because we don't really have the issues that the United States have up here in Canada when it comes to how high the numbers are, so to speak, right? So, we're seeing it impacting more and more teams south of the border. There's definitely some concern, I think, right now around the league in terms of how the rest of this season's going to go, given these outbreaks. Like, are there teams that are only going to end up playing 40 games this season in the regular season? Right? Like, or even less? Who knows what's going to happen the rest of the way? Who knows? Maybe they halfway through the season pull the plug and say, hey, we're doing, 3 or 4 bubbles now. Each division is in a bubble. Like, it's so hard to kind of predict what's going to go on here. But I think that's probably the biggest storyline to keep an eye on right now.
Yeah,
it seems right on the cusp of becoming entirely out of hand in the NHL right now. Like it's so, I always kind of try to think imagine if what was happening to those teams was happening in our division, and it would be, we would just be devastated. We'd be like, this is crazy. Like, what are we going to do? We'd be in a panic. The fan base would just be shocked. So I'm curious as to what's going to happen. It feels like the NHL might be the most problematic sport in a non-bubble environment to keep COVID free. You're playing indoors, the benches are really packed in. Like in football and basketball and pretty much everything else, you can really spread out. You know what I mean? Whereas in hockey, like you're on that bench, like you're packed in. There's so many guys are playing. Like if one guy has COVID, it's not like he's just on the bench. Like he has limited action. Like he's out there with other guys. Everybody's sort of in the mix. So I'm curious as to what the NHL is going to do and whether or not they were in fact prepared for where this seems to be going. Because the other side of this is, when you look at what went on with the Sabres and the Devils last week, like it really felt like the NHL mishandled that. Like they didn't really, and now it's just like, well, what were you doing? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure. There's a part of me that thinks maybe the bubble minimized how difficult it is to maintain a COVID-free league. You know what I mean? Like they might have let their guard down. Like they had not one case in the playoffs. It was a best case scenario. So you'd have to think that naturally the people in charge of running that would be like, oh, we got this. Like, no problem. Like, yeah, everything's cool. Like people are walking in with like their friends from outside. They're like, hey, what's up? And they're like, oh, it's cool. We had 0 cases in the past. No, it's fine. It's fine. No, it's fine. So I wonder how much of that is going on. Like, it feels like the NHL's in real dangerous territory right now. And they implemented a bunch of revisions tonight. I'm not sure if they were in place for tonight or if they're going to be in place for tomorrow. Probably tonight, but they took out the glass behind the coaches. So when you're watching a game now, it looks absolutely wild. Like it feels like there's so much more space on the bench, but I don't know. Like, I'm not sure how ironclad the NHL is right now.
Well, I got it right here. That was one of the things they did. And then another thing they did was they limited the time players can spend at the arena. So they said, okay, you can only show up an hour and 45 minutes before puck drop. And all of the players basically just kind of said, well, no, screw you guys. Like, that's not okay. Because
really,
there was a big backlash from the players because, they were kind of saying, like, we know how ridiculously ritual hockey players are. Like, every single player has their own ritual, right? So obviously it impacted it enough of it. And now they're talking about putting, little portable HEPA filters behind the bench as well to hopefully improve circulation. But the Philadelphia Flyers, actually, speaking of things not happening in Canada that are hockey related, they improved their HVAC system in their arena so that the entire arena's air can be filtered out and swapped every 30 minutes. And I'm wondering if that's something we might see more from some of the other teams around the league too, taking steps to try and prevent anything from happening. So it was kind of interesting to see the Flyers kind of step up and take charge that way, so to speak.
Wow, way to go, Flyers! I'm shocked it was the Flyers that were on top of that so much faster than everyone else. Way to go!
Credit where it's due.
Yeah, maybe for sure.
Maybe it just like really smelled like cheesesteaks in there. Like we gotta clean up this funk.
It's just
funky in here.
It's actually just Gritty's. It's just the mascot costume that the guy who is Gritty has to wear. All the guys' sweat gets caught in Gritty's fur and stinks up the whole arena.
All right, guys. Well, I got to go, but thank you so much for joining me on Handkerchief Dynasty episode 107, the videodrome episode. We've entered the videodrome. This is terrifying. I wish I'd prepared longer than 20 consecutive seconds prior to recording, so I'd have a nice backdrop and I'd look cool and stuff like you guys. But I'll up my game next time.
I think you look the coolest of the three of us.
Yeah, it's a pretty sweet cityscape there you got. Love it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll have to edit this, I guess, and then put it on YouTube or something. So that'll be fun. We'll see how that goes. All right. Well, thanks so much for. Zach, actually, just tell people your Twitter handle in case they aren't following you. I'm sure they are, though. If they aren't, give your head a shake and follow him. Come on.
Well, thank you very much. You can find me on Twitter at ZJ Laing, so ZJLAING, and that's where I'm always yelling about things Oilers related.
Yeah, and you can also read them on Oilers Nation, and you write for a few of the other Nation sites too, right?
Yeah, all of them: Canucks Army, Flames Nation, Jets Nation, Wings Nation, Leafs Nation, and occasionally on Daily Faceoff as well.
Awesome stuff. All right, well, thanks so much, guys. I'll shoot you a message when it's up, and enjoy your night, and all three of us will look forward with great anticipation to Saturday, the last chance Texaco for Mr. Zack Kassian against the Flamers.
I don't agree, but I'm looking forward to the game.
Okay.